Hi there, my name's Sean Longhurst. I'm the product lead for Conduct4SQL. In this video, I'll be taking you through the distributed query feature for Conduct4SQL. As you've seen in the previous videos, we've shown you how to install the central server, and we've shown you how to set up and configure Conduct4SQL across your existing SQL environment, no matter how large it is. So one of the first powerful features of Conduct4SQL, which is distributed query, will allow you to do the following. It will allow you to gather real-time information from a very large SQL Server environment. So what you can do with Conduct4SQL is literally write any query you can think of, whether it's a DBA type query or a business type query, anything that interrogates the data within SQL Server, and get that information back in real time. Conduct4SQL will then centrally consolidate those results for you so that you can view the results of your query across a very large SQL environment in one easy place. There are then advanced search options as well as various export options for the result set so that you can then distribute these in reports or to your managers or business or anything like that. And lastly, you can schedule these distributed queries. So if there are queries that you commonly want to run frequently, perhaps you want to do something like check certain application settings or SQL Server settings every Sunday night so that they're ready to be reported on to business every Monday morning, you can easily do that with Conduct4SQL as well. So let me take you through the feature. I'm back here in the Conduct4SQL user interface. I'm currently on the client overview screen. So as you can see, I've got 4 instances of SQL Server configured and running within Conduct4SQL. And typically, as I mentioned before, this is a much larger environment. Typically, you would see hundreds or thousands of instances of SQL installed and controlled and administered through Conduct4SQL. So if you want to use distributed query, you need to go to the central client control option on the left-hand menu over there. And what you'll see then is various options that we're going to go through in the future videos. But from this central client control interface, you can do distributed query, you can do distributed command, and distributed file sending. And in this video, we're going to cover the distributed query. So, right, let's go back to Management Studio. What I've got here is a query that I've written that typically a DBA might want to run. It gathers a whole bunch of information about the databases, and I want to know this information across my entire SQL environment, which could be hundreds of instances, for example. They could also be dispersed. Remember, the power of Conduct4SQL is that it works on a guaranteed message queuing system. So even if you're querying or you want to distribute this query amongst hundreds of instances of SQL, and a certain number of them are down due to infrastructural reasons, or the server's not running, or the SQL service isn't running, that doesn't matter. Conduct4SQL will keep retrying until it can run this query for you. But for all the instances of SQL that are up and running, it's going to come back with that information virtually in real time. So this is a query I've written. We always recommend keep writing your SQL code and testing it in Management Studio. That's what it's there for. So please keep using that. We do have a SQL editor, which you'll see now in Conduct4SQL, but it's by no means to replace Management Studio. So I'm going to copy that query, and I'm then going to go back to the central client control. These 3 lines you see here is an audit trail. So every query command that you issue through Conduct4SQL will be audited. So you can track back when things happen, when you ran queries, when you did things in your SQL environment. And we even have far more advanced auditing, but that will be covered in a separate video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, right, I want to send a query, and the first drop-down option you'll get is where you want to send that SQL query to. Do you want to send it to all, which is every single instance of SQL that you've set up and configured on Conduct4SQL, or a group? Groups were explained in the previous video whereby you can group your instances of SQL in any logical manner that makes sense to your organization. So you can send that query to a specific grouping of instances of SQL, or to some. To some is just an ad hoc pick and choose the instances that you want to send it to. I'm going to say I want to send it to all. At this point, our little SQL editor pops in, so you can paste your SQL query in there. I'm going to explain more of the advanced options within this query editor in a few seconds. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit the submit button at the bottom, and what you're going to see in real time is Conduct4SQL Central is going to send that query out across the entire SQL environment and get back the results in real time. So I'm going to click submit. You have a little status window that comes up. It shows you, and it's already gone green. Green meaning it's come back with the results from everywhere. It just shows you that it went to 4 instances of SQL and how many were outstanding. While it's yellow or orange, it means it's still waiting for it to come back from certain instances of SQL, which could be quite common in a very large environment. Once it's green, it means it's come back from everywhere. So I'm going to click close. Now, this little audit trail you see here, my latest query is right at the top. So if I click on that top query, the detail audit window appears at the bottom. This shows me every instance of SQL that I actually sent that query to. So you can see the 4 at the bottom there. If it took a while to run that query somewhere, you'd even see latency in the grid here showing you how long it took to get that query there and get the results back. So now you can click the View All button on the bottom left-hand side. And what Conductor for SQL does is it's now consolidated all those results for you. One important thing to note while we're here is if you write a query that doesn't return a column name, so a computated field, you need to alias it in order for Conductor for SQL to actually give you a heading at the top there. So please, if you write a query, you have any computed columns coming back, be sure to please give them a name and alias them. The first thing I would normally do is on the bar on the top where my mouse is, I would just right click and just say best fit for all columns so that you can nicely see the results. So here you can see my queries come back from all those instances of SQL. I've got a complete list of all my databases, various pieces of information on them. What you can do now, as you can imagine, is if you send a query like this out to hundreds of instances of SQL, it's going to be a very large result set, and you quickly want to get to pieces of information. So you can use the filters along the top. So for example, if I only wanted to look at certain information for the master database, I could click on this little filter at the top here and choose master, and there I can quickly see all the information for the master database. And you can filter on any column you like, and even start typing in the search boxes to get matches for what you want. So in the name there, I can quickly type in, for example, tempdb and get the results. And all the columns in your result set are fully sortable and searchable from the top 2 bars in your consolidated result set. But we also have a very powerful advanced search capability in your returned result set. So I'll give you an example here. On the bottom right hand side where my mouse is, you'll see there's an edit filter button. If you click that, you now get a complex expression builder for filters on your what could be very large result sets, and you want to quickly find out certain things in your SQL environment. So I'm going to give you an example here. I want to find out all my system databases that are in full recovery mode. So I can click on the filter, say add a filter. The first column I want to still filter on is the database ID, and I know that all database IDs 4 or less are system databases. So I can say that I want to look for database IDs that are less than the value of 5. Then I can add another filter. I want to say, and I also want to check whether a recovery model is like or equal to, in fact, full. And say OK or apply. Straight away, I can see exactly which of my system databases out in my SQL environment are running in full recovery model. And I can see that there's been no backup taken. So this can be any kind of query you can think about. Anything that you as a DBA might want to know across your SQL environment, whether it's configuration settings, any information is at your fingertips. If you want to know if there's any databases in your SQL environment that are offline, you can quickly send a query out across all of them, filter and search your result sets and get exactly to the information that you want. At the bottom here are 2 buttons, bottom left hand side, export to file and export to table. So once you've filtered this result set, or even if you want for the full result set, you can export this to a file, to put it into Excel or something like that, or you can export it to a table where you can then work with this information further if you want to report on it or write SQL queries further on this result set, you can do that as well. So that's a DBA type query example. Another example is maybe a business type query. So on my clients, I've got a point of sale system. Perhaps there's a reason why business wants to know immediately how many sales are happening in the last 2 minutes, or products that are on promotion this morning, how are they doing? Or it might be that someone suspects that there is an incorrect price on a product out there, and they quickly want to know what that product price looks like across all their branches, all their stores, for example. They might be running SQL Server as their database in the store. So I've written a query here. All this does is it goes and sums the number of transactions and the transactions amounts across the sales table on this point of sale system that's running on all my remote instances of SQL Server. So I'm going to send a command, and in this example, just to show you something send a query. In this example, just to show you something different, I'm going to say I want to send it to sum. So this allows me to pick and choose the instances of SQL I want to send it to. So I can say, well, I want to send it to that guy, and I want to send it to that guy. And there are little search boxes at the bottom of the window, so you can easily find an instance of SQL if you've got a list of hundreds and so forth. So I'm going to go OK, put my query in there, and say send. And it's already come back from both of them. I can click on that query and say view results. And here I can see quickly at those 2 instances of SQL, I've got a total number of transaction count and the monetary value for those. So as you can imagine, business can get their hands on real-time information across the dispersed environment of SQL Server without having to wait for the normal ETL warehouse reporting type data flows, which could mean quite a delay in information. You've got real-time access to any information out there, and this can be very powerful. Essentially, it's anything you can think of information gathering feature within Conduct4SQL on your SQL environment. Lastly, what I'd like to show you then is the scheduling. So let's say my database query, I want to run every Sunday night so that Monday morning I can have all of this information ready, whether it's for me as a DBA or whether it's for business. To do that, you go to the settings menu on the top left hand side, you click administration, and there's various options on the left hand side here which we'll go through in the course of the video series. But for this example, I'm going to click on the scheduler. What you can do here is schedule distributed queries and distributed commands, which will be covered in the next video. So here you can say I want to schedule a new command or a query, and you can add a schedule for that command or query. But before we do that, you need to save your scripts, the SQL script that you want to send or schedule. This is also another cool feature of Conduct4SQL. So if we go back to the central console, and I click the send query button, my query window pops up, and I paste my query script in there. Now, as you can see on the top right hand side of my cursor, there's a save button. You have the ability to save your SQL scripts within Conduct4SQL, which we highly recommend. That way the scripts aren't always lying around, various DBAs or SQL guys with scripts. We will store and save these scripts encrypted within Conduct4SQL, and you can secure them. So in order to save the script, you need to give it a name. So I'm going to say here, this is my weekly DB check query. Give it a description. I'm just going to say this script checks DB information weekly. Next, at the bottom here is a little drop-down security box. Once you're about to save your script in Conduct4SQL, you've got various security options. The first one is none, which means your SQL script isn't secured, meaning that someone else who has access to Conduct4SQL can log in, they can see your scripts, they can edit your scripts, they can save them, and they can work with them. The next option is not editable to other users. So in that example, other users of Conduct4SQL, other SQL people that you work with can see your SQL scripts, but they cannot edit them, they cannot modify them. This is also a useful option for if you want more junior people sending your scripts out and knowing that they're not going to be able to change any of your code. The last option is not viewable to any other users, meaning that you and only you can see and edit your scripts. So you have that choice of options when you save your scripts in Conductor. So I'm going to choose none. Then I'm going to click Save. And now under the Saved User Queries Dropbox, you'll see my first script has been saved in Conductor for SQL. So now you can easily reuse your scripts, and you don't have to find SQL or remember SQL when you want to do common queries to Conductor. So I'm going to cancel that, go back to the Central Administration Scheduler, and I'm going to say here, I want to schedule a new command or query. On the right hand side, you just give it a name. So I'm going to say it's a weekly DB query. Destination type, so do you want this query to go to all or to a group? I'm going to say I want it to go to all. The message type, so just telling us, is it a command or a query you want to send out there? Well, it's a query. Now you can get from the drop down list your script list. So there's my script that I've saved. I'm going to choose that, and now you can schedule it. I don't have any schedules configured, so I'm going to click New or Edit. And in here is a Conductor for SQL Scheduler. So it's very similar to schedulers that you know. You can schedule this query hourly, weekly, monthly, and give it a schedule name and so forth. Once you've done that, you can just save this scheduled query, and it will go out every week, for example, ready for you to check all the results from your SQL environment on a Monday morning, for example. So that's it when it comes to the distributed query feature. Really nice, really powerful. Also, please note, we do have a lot of built-in reporting with Conductor for SQL. So a lot of the common things, like I've just shown you, database details, backup issues, when jobs are running, when jobs are failing, all of that kind of information is already available for you without you having to write a piece of SQL under our reports section, and that will be covered in a later video as well. But this feature is really, really great for that ad hoc, real-time type information that you want for your SQL environment. Thank you.